So let's talk about some of those hacks. You're obviously about performance optimization. We talked a lot about autophagy through Spermidine. You mentioned lights, red light, mitochondria health, all of that. You mentioned sauna. What else is in your repertoire do you advise people do?
So, well, listen, it goes back to the 4 rocks. Okay. That, I mean, literally, and the other big recommendation I have, listen, a heart rate monitor costs about 50 to 70 bucks. I believe it is the single most important tool that you can use in exercise. Being able, it gives you a scoreboard. It gives you a place to look. And I'll tell you, there's a little bit of an addiction that goes with this. When you start to exercise with a heart rate monitor, all of a sudden you show up to exercise and you don't have your monitor with you. You're like, oh man, is this even worth it? So I'll warn you now. And you know what? Right outside the door of my office right now, my wife is riding our Peloton. And she's got her Apple Watch and it's talking to, so there's a lot of good technology right now that's really enhancing our ability to improve that experience. So I think heart rate is critical. I'm also a huge believer in heart rate variability. So I wear an Oura ring. I'll confess, you and I were talking before we start. I live in a 42-foot RV. My wife and I travel nationally, but in my old house, I had a credenza that probably had 50 different heart rate measuring devices in it. Heart rate monitors, HRV, things like that. HRV is a wonderful tool. We know HRV, we used it as a selection tool for my wrestling team at Ohio State. So I knew who would be an All-American the first day of the tournament based on HRV status. I know your HRV will go to 0 the heartbeats before you die. Okay, that we know that will happen. So the way I look at it, the more I push my RV away from 0, the healthier and the better I am. So using a piece of technology, like I said, whether it's an Oura ring or you got to be careful with the wrist straps. I'll tell you, that technology I don't think is settled yet. It's hard to measure HRV. There's a lot of good tech that's coming up right now to measure this. So buyer beware when you're looking at these tools. But I think HRV is an important overall marker. I can't wait until I go, and I work with a great functional medicine doctor. I love this guy. He understands systems, but he still depends on lab tests 2 to 4 times a year. I can't wait. I said to him, when am I going to walk in and you're going to look at my HRV and you're going to look at my CGM data and make decisions? Because I believe CGM data is much more valuable than A1C data.
Yeah.
And they go hand in hand, right? But I think it's more granular. When you're using tools of daily measurement, it gets more granular. You get better feedback because you can associate with CGM data. I can associate exercise with an improvement in my sugar. I can associate good sleep with a change in my HRV. Those things go hand in hand. If I'm only getting data every 2 to 4 times a year, who the hell knows what it's associated with?
Yeah. No, I'm fully on board. We have a great HRV system we use here, multiple actually at the clinic, because it does give us a much more comprehensive assessment. Labs are wonderful, but they're a little bit downstream at times. They're very interpreted differently alone, let's say. If you combine that with HRV, with other spectrometry types of looking at tissue instead of blood, all of these other things, you get a much more robust picture. And HRV, you could do so much with. You could look at hormones. You could look at autonomic response. You could get all these different things, energy pathways. I mean, it really is a very, very comprehensive way to analyze the state of health of anybody.
Yeah.
So I think it's awesome that you're really looking at that as a main function to how you see your own health state.
Ultimately, and then my third big biomarker that I use is watts per heartbeat. So when I exercise using a device that measures wattage. We have a Peloton in our rig. I have a Concept 2 ski ergometer that gives me wattage, feeds out. So ultimately, I want to be able to do more work with less heartbeats. I want this relation, work heartbeat. So everything that you do should be raising your ability to do work at the same heart rate or lower your heart rate to give it a given amount of work. But when we get them both moving, boy, things are going great. So that watts per heartbeat is a great biomarker. And ultimately that's what you're looking for. You see a drop. Listen, the first thing we learn in exercise science is that one of the benefits of exercise is lowered resting heart rate. Mm-hmm. Okay. So that's where resting heart rate comes into play. The amount of work it takes to stay alive at rest is a constant. We call it 1 MET. And that's always the same. But as your heart rate drops to deliver the amount of energy to supply that 1 MET, there's a health benefit. That's why we see resting heart rate is such a great measurement. We know that when resting heart rate bumps a little bit, there's a little bit more of a demand on the system. We can see viral and bacterial infections 2 to 3 days before you're symptomatic. We used HRV as a tool on 2 occasions when I was at Ohio State. You have 10 guys in your starting lineup. You're allowed to travel 16. The NCAA lets you take 16 with you. So we're trying to decide who the other 6 are that are coming with us. And I'm like, our 58 pounder is going to be sick on Sunday. So we need to bring a backup there. And they're like, what are you talking about? And this is on a Thursday. I'm like, his HRV started dropping this morning. He'll get symptomatic. He'll wrestle fine Friday. He'll get symptomatic Saturday. He'll be sick Sunday. And we nailed it twice. So, and I don't know if you guys see that, it's sure. Nice when I've got a group of elite guys, I'm seeing their data every day, but that's the kind of observations that you can make. So, this is that autophagy, exercise, life pathway, immunity. It all goes hand in hand. And we just happen to sit at the entry of a novel molecule, spermidine, and spermidine life that turns out to be beneficial.
Yeah. I mean, those patterns of health and disease are there if you find them and you look for them. And you were looking them through HRV. So they are everywhere. We see these patterns of life, and that's the whole point of, being in line with what you see in nature, basically, as well.
Absolutely.
And applying that to humans, which are part of nature.